if your prostate is enlarging, there's a chance it will press against the urethra and you start having problems with urinating. People who have enlarged prostate will tell you the first symptom they start to experience is recurrent infections and then difficulty in passing urine. Sometimes they go to the loo, they urinate a very small amount of urine. When they come out, they still have that urge to urinate. So it's constantly there. They want to urinate all the time. They think they've emptied it. When they just come out, they feel like, you know what? I don't feel like I've emptied the entire bowel. I've not emptied the bladder completely. And this is one of the reasons why they are given muscle relaxants. There are drugs that they are given to actually help them relax the urethra and relax the bladder so that urine comes out easily. Now, when you take drugs to actually help you open up the urethra so that urine flows out easily, you have not fixed the problem, because the problem is an enlarged prostate, and that problem is coming from two things. One is hormone that is called DHT, we will talk about it, dihydrotestosterone. Number two is insulin. And then we can add their hormone number three, which is estrogen. So we have this, we have the two hormones, which is dihydrotestosterone, and then we have another hormone that is called insulin. This hormone is a very crazy hormone, and actually the one that is actually responsible for an enlarged prostate is called insulin-like growth factor. Insulin-like growth factor. But I want you to just shed off the names, because we are here to understand so that we actually know how to prevent. Okay, so let's go back a little bit. So that's an enlarged prostate. Two hormones plus one is estrogen. Why estrogen? Because estrogen is a building hormone. Estrogen builds fat in women. That's why it gives you the hips, gives you the buttocks, gives you all this fat deposition. And in the uterus, this estrogen can actually build the fibroids, can build the PCOS, the adenocarcinomas, and all that. So estrogen is very dangerous, even to the men. In the prostate, estrogen builds the prostate gland together with the insulin hormone. So they build the prostate, and that becomes a bigger one. Now, I hope you remember when we were talking about the growths, we talked about specific growths. We talked about the hypertrophy, which means an enlarged, same cells just be enlarging. We talked about hyperplasia, where we multiply cells but of the same type. We talked about metaplasia, where we have cells from one type changing form into another type. And then we talked about dysplasia, where they lose function totally. And then we talked about neoplasia. Neoplasia is the cancers, but hypertrophy is the benign prostate enlargement. So understand that having an enlarged prostate does not mean you have cancer. This should get into your heads. Now, most people think because they have been diagnosed with high PSA and they have an enlarged prostate, it's automatic that they will end up getting prostate cancer. It's a lie. An enlarged prostate is hypertrophy or hyperplasia. It is not prostate cancer. They are different. This was just an enlarged prostate. The cells of the prostate building up to make it bigger. But prostate cancer, this is a type of cancer. It's actually metastatic. It spreads. Remember we said there are those that are benign, those are the tumors, and there are those that spreads. We call it metastasis. So the prostate cancer spreads. But prostate cancer is one of the cancers that actually spreads through the lymphatic system. So remember we said some cancers spread through blood or the connective tissue. We call them sarcomas. Some cancers spread through the lymph system, and we call them what? Carcinomas. So the prostate is part of the cancers that actually spread through the lymph nodes and the lymphatic system. So is the lung cancer, so is the colon cancer, so is the pancreatic cancer, and we've talked about all those. So I want you to know this. Before I even jump into this prostate, I want you to understand something, because there's a drug that people who have an enlarged prostate are given. It's called finasteride. And when you just know the drugs that you're taking, and I hope people who actually have an enlarged prostate can actually tell us their story about this medication. If you know very well your medication, it shall be easier for you to actually know the mode of action, but most of you don't even take some chance to just see how these drugs work. When you just Google the mode of action of finasteride, you will actually go back and see where the cancer is coming from, because the mode of action will tell you what we are trying to either block or activate. So this drug called finasteride is one of the drugs that is used in enlarged prostate. And the reason why it's used in enlarged prostate is because it blocks one of the enzymes one of the enzymes that actually activates the process of breakdown of testosterone into dihydrotestosterone. Dihydrotestosterone is the active metabolite of testosterone. Put a pause there. Go back a little bit. We have testosterone. Testosterone is produced by your testicles. And then this testosterone has several functions. Or rather, let's talk about the fats of testosterone. So when you have produced testosterone, where does it go to? Or why do we need it? We need it because of multiple things. But the fats of testosterone are 4. So you produce testosterone from your testicles. And remember, testosterone is coming from cholesterol. It's a sex hormone coming from steroids. So you must consume a lot of foods that are rich in cholesterol for you to get enough testosterone. Now you produce testosterone, and now this testosterone comes in. And number one role is to actually give you the secondary male characteristics. This is the broad shoulders. So therefore, people who have very narrow shoulders and they are men, low testosterone levels. This is the deep voice. I'm not saying Wakamba wako na low testosterone. I'm not saying my fellows from Kisii have low testosterone. However, testosterone is the hormone that is responsible for the deep voice. Hello? Wacha tukunywe maji. Tutaanza kupigwa vita na Wakamba na Wakisii. Anyway. So, secondary characteristics, broad shoulders, deep voice, this ability to go out and actually conquer. So the dominance factor of us, the muscle growth, the bone density, all that is testosterone. Even hair distribution on the chest and all those areas, the pubic hair, that is testosterone. So that is fat number one. So we produced it to actually help us grow into being men. That is one, and that is what we need it for. Fat number two, this testosterone has to bind on a protein and then it has to be stored like a reservoir. So there's a protein in blood that is actually called the sex hormone binding globulin. Sex hormone binding globulin, understand this, that proteins in blood are supposed to bind things and then move them around. So when it's bound to the protein, it can actually be transported. However, anything that is bound to a protein, it is not available for action, it is not available for activity, it is also not available for metabolism, so it cannot be broken down. Metabolism is a negative feedback. For example, you are producing testosterone and the body knows excess of this testosterone will bring problems. So we need to break it down into inactive compounds to get it out of the system through urine. However, some of this testosterone is bound to protein. Therefore, we cannot break it down, right? We cannot metabolize it. So therefore, this acts as a reservoir to maintain these testosterone levels in the system. So that if the level of testosterone falls, we can easily release this testosterone from the bound protein, and now we have it for activity. Because the unbound testosterone is the one that is available for action. The bound one is not available for action or for metabolism. Tumeshika mpaka hapo. So we have produced testosterone, we have used it for secondary male characteristics, we have bound it to protein for a reservoir for storage, and then only 2%, about 2 to 3% of testosterone, the total testosterone that you produce, is actually used for the secondary characteristics, for the fertility, for the masculinity, for the muscle growth, for the bone density, for the dominance, for the beard, for hair distribution. Only 2% is used for that function. Now that tells you how much of testosterone is free. There's a lot of testosterone that becomes free. And worst, for those people who use supplements, the steroid supplements, the testosterone boosts or shots to actually boost their muscle growth, they are loading the system with a lot of testosterone. Understand this. We have bound one, we have used the other, but the one that we've used is only 2%. Therefore, the remaining amount of testosterone is carried all the way to the liver now for metabolism, for the breakdown. Metabolism just means breaking it down. Now remember, metabolism is supposed to yield two things. Metabolism is supposed to yield either active compounds to be used by the system or inactive compounds to be excreted out of the system through urine, through feces, through sweat and all that, even breath. However, metabolism of testosterone, the larger percentage, about 85%, yields an active compound that is called DHT, dihydrotestosterone. Remember, it's active. You should remember that because that's the most important part. So DHT is active metabolite of testosterone. Now that it's active, what is it going to do to the body? Because it has to bind to receptors and do something in the body, because when it's still active, it cannot be excreted through urine. It cannot leave the body. It's there, it's now active. So the body has to put it to use. At that level, I want you to understand, where we are converting testosterone into dihydrotestosterone in the liver, the enzyme that is actually involved in this process is called 5-alpha reductase. Hello? 5-alpha reductase. Anytime you see a word that ends with ASE, S, lipase, protease, ASE, that is an enzyme. So therefore, this enzyme breaks testosterone into dihydrotestosterone, which is an active metabolite. So when you have now DHT, it is an active metabolite, it's dangerous. This is the protein or the testosterone metabolite that is very dangerous in prostate cancer, in an enlarged prostate. So this protein, this active metabolite binds to cells and activates the enlargement of the prostate. Oh, now you get it right. So we get testosterone, which is a good one, but now it's broken down to an active metabolite, which is now dangerous to the prostate. So it causes an enlarged prostate.